Hello and welcome to Virtual Concert Hall's live music channel. My name is Chris Howard, and boy, this is going to be such a good episode. We are presenting the finale special. We're playing parts 10 and 11 in this incredible documentary on Beethoven's Symphony No. 7, written and narrated by Lawrence Rapchak, created by New Media Productions worldwide and Virtual Concert Halls, as well as produced by the Architects of Music. This incredible collaboration has been possible because it is our passion to be connecting musicians and audiences in real-time musical performances and live programs from around the globe.
And now, the decisive F major ending of the scherzo suddenly drops a half step to a unison E, and the finale begins. Wow! Leaving little doubt that we are now in the key of E major. Right? But wait, let's now add the next two measures. Aha! It's a dominant seventh chord on E, which leads us to A major, the symphony's home key. And as you heard, Beethoven again uses a single short motive to build each phrase. In the dashing finale of the Fourth Symphony, the basic cell was just those 4 notes. Here in the Seventh, the cell is slightly longer. It's 6 notes, then higher. And it peaks with this figure, this joyous upward leap. And as we've come to expect from Beethoven, he will extract this motive and use it in many novel ways. But for now, the exposition powers away, driven by the main motive. And the rest of the orchestra provides the rhythmic framework that keeps everything contained and moving ahead. Here it is. And the second theme of this main group is stunning. Suddenly, all of the rushing stops and everything lines up vertically for an exuberant march. And now, an episode based on the main motive. This one is very important. We will call it the extension. The strings toss the main motive back and forth, like so. Obviously, it goes much faster than that, but now you can hear the motive. And all the while, the winds sustain the note E, the all-important energy source in this symphony. And this new episode repeats now in sequences. Landing us in the key of F sharp minor, and a new theme appears, very rugged, like a strict military-style gallop. And that light, fleeting theme in C sharp minor is based entirely on the dominant harmony with this on top, and the tonic, C sharp minor, leading to another stern, march-like figure. Now it's sweetness and light in D major, but moving back now unexpectedly to C sharp minor. Furious tempest. And this harmonic cadence repeats over and over. But to push things now to their breaking point, Beethoven slips in our main motive in the second violins and violas, but its top note, B natural, there it is, perfectly logical within the motive, clashes against the B sharp, which is so prominent in this orchestral tempest. So we now have, it goes very quickly. It's hard to pick it out, but it certainly adds to the intensity as the music rages on. And there's another modulation definitely not found in the harmony textbooks of Beethoven's day. The opening fanfare, bum-ba-da-bum, taking us now into F major, and the main theme returns. But now that upward leap from the theme takes on a life of its own. It's almost operatic in its grand rhetorical gestures. And even though this dramatic exchange between high and low strings is all in unison and octaves, our ears can still fill in the implied harmonies. It's still a bizarre progression with these dramatic sustained notes, the last of which gets compressed, the rhythm double times, plunging us into C major and the main theme. Sounds like we're in the central development section of this finale. And now, a lengthy section built entirely on a new two-note figure. And one, and once the music settles into D minor, like so, with that same two-note figure, with the fanfare repeated in the violins, Beethoven slowly changes the harmonies so that the music expands chromatically. These two-note groups continue, but each time the lower of the two notes moves up a half step, like so. We have this, right, the two notes. The lower note moves up a half step. Then the upper note takes its turn, and it moves up. Then the lower, then the upper, then the lower, then the upper. Here is this passage, and listen to where it leads. A delicate miniature version of the opening fanfare. And the main theme is now in the flute, in B flat major, one tiny half step higher than our tonic A major.
Well, here we are. We are currently in the finale special. We're written and narrated by Lawrence Rapchak and produced by Virtual Concert Halls and the rest of this incredible team. And wow, just the way it starts. I mean, come on. Just the way it starts is just it's everything is an explosion right away. And if you compare this to the way that the second movement starts, right? It starts with a question mark. This doesn't start with an exclamation question mark. It starts with an exclamation mark. It starts with thunder and lightning starting this whole thing. And I want to talk about how Beethoven sort of, for me as an interpreter, kind of transitions. I think that especially this movement reminds me a lot of Beethoven's Emperor Concerto, the first movement, in that every section that he goes to, there's some incredible theme that takes you and is memorable, and it's rhythmic, but also brings you to sort of like different rooms of an incredible palace. And I think that's a really special place in which Beethoven is entering. Right, he's no longer as consumed with making sure every transition kind of goes into somewhere, and then it all adds up mathematically, and everything is kind of conceptualized in a correct way. He's just going to take you from one place to the other, different dimensions, different universes, different things, right as you go. And so what ends up happening is you just feel like you're along for the ride. And I think it's so thrilling. It's so thrilling. And what is really cool about this is, and to talk about this more, it's like he starts off with this sort of there's sort of this sort of quick little cell that kind of climbs up and climbs down, right? And then he goes straight into the second thing, which is the exuberant march. Then he goes to this strict military gallop, and before you know it, he's in the development. So what that does is, I think it suspends the audience belief and expectations of what's happening next, and he uses all these harmonic dissonances and modulations that you don't find, as he says, as Larry says, not in that harmony textbook, in order to sort of throw you off. And I wonder how revolutionary that really was in its day. I think the premiering of this symphony, especially this finale, must have been just hair-raisingly crazy, and what I mean, admiration of is that right now, if you go to a premiere of a new piece that's written, the reaction that you may get is varied, and they may be breaking some rules, but you kind of know what to expect in a way. But with this piece, I wonder what the audience was expecting and how Beethoven completely just did away with it. I think of this as such an incredible time for Beethoven, because I think, along with the deafness, perhaps he no longer cared what people really thought musically. I think he needed still to have funds and to raise money to have his performances and compositions published. But I think he didn't care anymore musically. He was able to explore and go further than anybody else. And that's what makes these sort of incredible modulations and progressions so cool, because it's in his head and he didn't care anymore that it may not make sense or that the audience didn't appreciate. No, he's just going to do it. He's going to do it. And he includes chromaticism and harmonic dissonances, as Larry talks about, which I think spurs and starts this sort of the Romantic Symphony, the late Romantic tone poems, and Wagner's operas. And a question for you as an audience member I want to ask is, do you think that the composers like Wagner and late Romantic composers, do they take it too far? Do they take this chromaticism and harmonic dissonances too far? Because what I find really fascinating about what Beethoven does is he will establish really simple harmonies, building blocks that everyone would understand and it makes sense. And then he'll turn it on its head. Then he will do something special, and he will include moments of chromaticism, moments of incredible intensity, and then he'll let you go. And then it's back into something that you recognize, something that's easy to kind of absorb, and then he will turn you again. And so I think this sort of juxtaposition and this contrast makes his music really work. And I wonder, what you think about this, and whether, some composers like Wagner, for example, who's constantly trying to find ways to make more things more dissonant, and does it start to sound the same? Does it not have such an intensity because it's always sounding dissonant? We need consonance and dissonance in order for this, this artwork to work, perhaps. So I'll leave it to you, and if you would like to comment and write this, I will be more than willing to read it, and we'll talk about it more maybe in another episode. We can find us on all these different platforms. Please write to us so we can find out truly what you're interested in and where you're at. And I love this wonderful part of the interaction. And so now part 10 is done. We're going to move on to the next part, which will take us further into this finale. And you're joining us now. Welcome. Thank you. This is an incredible exploration of the finale of Beethoven's Seventh. Written the documentary series written and narrated by Lawrence Rapchak, and we have many other symphonies coming up. So please, subscribe to us and keep following what we do. Now, without further ado, I think it's time. Let's launch into part 11 of this incredible Beethoven Seventh Symphony.
So again, we're in the development section of the finale. And as the previous section with the chromatic sequences, the two notes, as it was fading away, this two-note figure ended up sort of stuck on these two notes. D sharp, the lower leading tone to the all-important E. And there's a reason Beethoven has led us there. Beethoven then quietly slipped upward to F. The continual interplay between E and F, so important in this symphony. But this drone-like figure of D sharp to E will return in an astounding passage that builds to the symphony's final pages. But I want to back up now and examine something very important that we've heard thus far. This is sort of a sidebar. Beethoven's brilliant symphonic thinking, he's so grooved into this continual evolving nature of his material that we find that much of what we've heard thus far contains another important motivic cell. It's a simple descending scale. It's part of the main motive. Those very quick 4 notes. They are rapid 16th notes, we call them. That's the rhythmic division. Then in the bravura march theme, here it is, the descending scale of 8th notes. That is twice as slow as the 16th notes. Okay, then in that episode I called the extension, where the strings tossed the motive back and forth, Beethoven used a descending scale again, but like so. Here. Twice as slow again. These are quarter notes. But in all these variants of the descending scale, whether 16th notes, 8th notes, quarter notes, they are all tightly connected motivically. It's the same thing, but going at totally different speeds. And whether or not Beethoven consciously devised these relationships, or whether they just sprang forth naturally from his total immersion in his materials, they combine to create a fabulously integrated organic whole and are a major part of the internal logic and architecture of this music. And wait till you hear what he does with this descending scale figure as the symphony enters the home stretch. So now back to that delicate miniature version of the finale's opening, somehow in B-flat major. Beethoven will now take the upward leap from the theme, this pattern, and he echoes it through the string section from top to bottom. Now he repeats this passage verbatim, except that the top note, B flat, now is raised a half step to a B natural, allowing for a diminished 7th chord, which filters downward now through the string section as it crescendos. And in the past we've seen how these diminished 7th chords can resolve in any number of ways. So here, at this crucial turning point from the development in B-flat major into the recapitulation in A major, everything hinges on this single diminished 7th chord. Where's it going? Which can indeed resolve like so. And it does. And the recapitulation begins with the same explosive energy that powered the exposition. All of the materials repeat, but they remain in the tonic key. And at the height of that raging tempest, with the main motive clashing harmonically with the diminished chord against it, at that same exact point where we veered off into the development section, Beethoven now repeats the opening fanfare. And he cadences in B minor, and the coda begins. coda begins with a repeat of that extension episode, with the main motive, but the descending quarter note scale added to it. And you recall in that episode that the first violins are answered by the seconds and the violas, highest voice to lowest voice. This is now repeated and reversed, starting in the cellos and bass, now lowest voice to highest. And now, a truly remarkable event. You recall that long passage in the development section with the two-note figure, rising, okay, that gradually faded as it descended until it settled on D sharp and E. No. It's those notes, but let's not go there.
Wow, this is such an exciting part, and I love how the producers at Virtual Concert Halls, when they're putting these images together, it's alluding obviously to Jaws, right, at the end. And it's so cool and so interesting that, you know, before Jaws was ever kind of conceived of as an idea, the music for it, you know, always calls back to Beethoven, right? Like, you know, this is just so cool. And so without talking too much about this episode, this part, because I think it really naturally leans into the next part really quickly. I want to just bring your attention to a few things I want to talk about before we go on to this next part. And as this development continues, we have constantly sort of drone-like figure of the D sharp and E, right, which we talk about in the beginning and also towards the end, right? It's what makes this development part very interesting, and this chromatic kind of motif is sort of like, you know, friction that draws, and it's like, you know, soft at first, slow at first, but then as it keeps going, you know, the intensity builds, and it's like fire, you know, fire comes out. And I think this motif, as well as Larry's brilliant dissection of how Beethoven uses descending scales, I think is so interesting. Now, what you need to understand as interpreters is that we're always looking for clues as to how this music ought to be interpreted and how it's all put together. Because if we're going to memorize this music, if we're going to really make it part of ourselves, we need to understand not just the story and the narrative and the rhetoric of the music, but also the construction of it, so that we know what's coming up next, and we know what the surprises are, we know what's happening, right? As a performer, as an interpreter, I can only speak as such. We know everything in the music, ideally, right? If you're a performer, we try to know as much as we can, extract as much as we can, and put it in our head, so as we play the piano, violin, cello, whatever instrument, we are producing something that is a piece of art that you may not know or may not be as familiar with, but we should know really well. And yet, you as a listener will be surprised, and we're not trying to give away the surprise either. We know everything, and yet we just slowly give it to you as an interpreter. And so what's really interesting is, as we understand how these pieces of music are put together, this descending scale sort of building block, and so tightly wound, these descending scales at different speeds too, you know, from 16th note to quarter notes to half notes. What that really does is it gives us, oh, so that's what he's doing, right? That's what he's doing in bringing all these things together. I see. So this finale is actually about descending scales, right? There's or maybe descending and incrementally increasing scales, ascending scales. What it is there's so many different things, and what's brilliant about it, and I'll talk about this a little bit towards the end of the episode of this part, is that I think all of these come together to form an organic whole. It's like when you first study the parts that make up a cell, right? And you find all the different parts that make up what a healthy cell would look like. And you realize, oh, so that's what it does. And then when you multiply it, then it becomes, you know, say a muscle, or let's say a fat tissue, or it becomes, a blood vessel. And so all these things that become a part of a whole, it all starts to make sense. And therefore, when it makes sense, we can interpret something and it becomes glorious and great. So I hope that as you're watching this, you're coming to an understanding of not just Beethoven as a genius, but also our role as interpreters. Like, this is what we need to know in order to be able to perform something really brilliant for you. As a music lover, I really wonder, like, as a music lover, do you need to know all this? And I think Anna raised this question before. You know, as a music lover, do you need to know all of this that's happening? Maybe not. But maybe if we're able to leave you with a few little pointers of how all these things happen, then you can come to appreciate a little bit more, and you come to appreciate that this art is not that much different from, let's say, a movie or a book or a play. It's always a beginning, middle, and end, right? And it's always storytelling and motives and things. And I find the best stories do what Beethoven does and takes a little idea and expands and lets it grow, lets it fester, right? Or the greatest movies, takes a certain kind of camera angle and reuses it in ways that allow you to either feel something spooky or feel something like extraordinary, and like it builds. So it's all part of the same thing. It's all part of a whole. And so wow, I'm just so glad Larry brings this to light in such an interesting way, and I hope this commentary that I'm giving also just gives you a glimpse of what we do as interpreters that makes our job so much fun as learners and also as communicators of this music. A big thanks. Big thanks to our team, big thanks to our collaborators, our supporters and organizers you see on the screen. These people who have helped to put our show together, have helped to make this really possible and a joy to be a part of, right? Like how often can one say that it's such a joy to make music constantly, and with these incredible people from all around the world. We have the Cairo Opera Orchestra, we have places within the US and all over Europe and Asia. These are music organizations. Of course, some of them are not for profit, some of them are for profit, but they all want to add value to this world and to use this music, this medium, as a way to, for self-expression, but a way also to make the world a better place. So a big thanks to them, and a big thanks to, of course, our audience, you who are watching. Please continue to support us. I think music is a big, important part of what we do as musicians. Of course, but most importantly, it's a way to share our life experience, right? This is our way, and you can watch us on all these different media platforms. We are looking for more opportunities to do music and musicians' daily live shows. These are really a part of our passion to bringing more musicians and their stories to the screen, to you, our listeners and our watchers. Until next time, happy music making. See you soon.